Welcome back. I'm your host, Kelle Sparta, transformational shaman, spiritual business coach. I'm here with my best friend in Boquete, Katherine Loranger, and she is a amazing spiritual business coach coming from a completely different angle than I do, which I love about that. And today we are going to talk about aligned offer creation, how to pick what to do for your signature offer. And we talked about this last time with the niche conversation. So if you have not listened to the niche conversation and you don't know specifically who your target market is, like more than just all women or the whole world or whatever, go listen to that episode first because that's important before you start having this conversation with us. When we're talking about, actually, before I say that, remember to subscribe and share. I always forget to say this until the very end, and a lot of people don't listen to all the way to the end. So please remember to like, subscribe, and share, and please rate the podcast for us, because the more ratings we get, the more we get heard, and the more we are inspired to do more for you, because if nobody's listening, why bother? So you can help us in that way, and hopefully we're helping you with the content in the program. So moving on, when we're talking about signature offers, so first thing is you need a freaking signature offer. Let's start with that. And it's one thing that you sell to one target market using one platform for a minimum of 1 year. It's also known as you need to commit, right? Because if you don't commit, then your energy is frittered and you're just pivot. We talked about this on the panic pivot episode. And so you need a signature offer. So we're going to talk today about how do you figure out what signature offer to commit to and what to put in it. Okay. And in order to do that, you have to know your target market. That's why we were talking about niche on the last episode. Okay. So do you want to start or you want me to start on this one, Katherine?
No, you go ahead. You're on a roll.
Okay. I'm on a roll. So when you are looking at your signature offer, and this is what I tell people, because I talk to people so often who have so many different things that they're good at. And they're like, I could do this, or I could do that, or I could do the other thing. It's okay, fine. So there are three primary markets that get the most purchasing power. One is relationships. One is health and wellness, things like that. And one is business, how to make more money, right? And so those are the three markets that have huge impact in terms of people are buying from them pretty much all the time. And so if you have a generalized sort of, I do really good things and it could go in 15 different directions and I could work with all these different types of groups and I don't know how to pick which group and blah, blah, blah. Pick one that's associated with one of those big three, because they're more likely to more easily convert, is really the plan there. And so the pieces that you want to look at is, who are you inherently as a person? Because when we look at creating an offer, I talk to so many people who have so many gifts and they're like, I can do all these different things and I want to do all of them. It's great. Okay, but who are you inherently? So it took me probably a decade to identify that I carry the energy. Initially, I thought it was energy of change. Now I know it's the energy of transformation. Change and transformation, very different things. And I know that I carry the energy of change or transformation. And so now what I do is inherently around transforming, right? So people who are desiring transformation, who are desiring to get unstuck, who are desiring to shift themselves into a new state of being energetically, new way of being physically, they come to me, right? And once you know who you are, then it's easier to identify what it is that you want to do. Now, for years, I've been doing this as online classes, and I've done the occasional retreat, but I've always known that the retreats are my bailiwick, right? They're where I really shine. I bring all of my gifts to the table. I get to do it all in an intuitive fashion in the moment and create something amazing and stitching it together as I go. And that brings all of my gifts to the table. So that's the other piece you want to look at, is what brings all of your gifts to the table. How do you bring everything that you do together? And even if it's weird, okay? It can be very weird, all right? As long as there is sufficient market for it, you can do something extraordinarily weird and it'll be okay. 20 years ago, if you had said to me that hairdressers were going to be selling energy work with their hairdressing skills, I would have been like, that's an odd combination. But today, it is actually fairly common to see that. And there are hairdressers out there that are doing energy work while they do their haircuts. And I don't care if it's weird. Put it together. If this is what you do, then do it together. Now, not everything may fit. I'm a master hair braider, right? Because I worked the Renaissance fairs for many years. I don't do hair braiding as part of my work, right? It's become a hobby for me. Some things can be hobbyized and put off to the side. They don't have to be part of your full integration of everything. So don't try and shove the kitchen sink in there, but work to try and create the things that you are passionate about into a single piece of a single offering. Now, how do you decide what to leave out? You look at your niche, right? So in some niches, you can do things like my online courses, right? Online courses and coaching and stuff like that works great for sort of a mid-tier niche. If you're looking at an upper tier niche, they don't want to have to take classes. They don't want to have to go through content. They don't have time for that. They want it to be delivered to them immediately. And we talked about that on the last podcast, right? They want to just be able to say, I need this, and have somebody give them the answer. So you need to understand your target market and what it is that they want and how they listen. Back years ago, when I was selling training to real estate agents, I made sure that what I was delivering to them was audio, because 99% of all the training that real estate agents engage in is in their car in between showings. And there was no way to do that on video. It was impractical. So I understood my market, and I understood because I had been a real estate agent. And so I understood that I was listening to tapes in my car my whole time. Okay, I had to deliver something that people could listen to in their car. And so initially it's tapes, and then it becomes MP3s or CDs, then MP3s, and so on and so forth. But you need to understand your market, because if you're delivering it, you may be delivering the most amazing thing in the world, but if you're delivering it in a format that they will not consume, then it's useless. If you had tried to sell me a bunch of videos back in the day when I was doing that, I would not have bought them, because I knew I did not have time to sit down and watch a bunch of videos. I was working 60 to 100 hours a week, but I had lots of empty time in my car, 25,000 miles a year in my car, right? So you have to understand how they're going to consume the content. And some people are readers, some are listeners, some are watchers. And so these are all different things to understand about your market as well. So I happen to know that my market is highly reader based. And so I put a book out because they love books, right? So you have to know who you're selling to. All right. So I'm gonna let you jump in there if you have anything to say, or if you want to disagree with me at any point, because we often do disagree.
Yeah, I think so. I think just it's important also for people to know that the first offer and the first niche that you pick are likely not going to be the ones that you end up with. And yes, I agree with the focus and commitment and not panicking and pivoting all over the place, but also give yourself room to be curious about how it's going. Give yourself room to really look at the numbers and the metrics to see how it's working. The first time you put it out, you can put it out as a beta and gather information, right? And when you let people know that you're putting it out as a beta, and perhaps you're even building it a little bit as you go along, right? They're going to get some premium pricing on it because it's the first time. You're co-creating in a way, you're going to use a lot of their feedback. That's really going to help you in creating something that's ultimately going to be sellable to other people. And again, just allow yourself to know that it's going to shift. It's likely going to shift and change as you move along.
Yeah. And just to clarify, she said premium, but she meant promotional pricing. But
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry, yeah, so that they're getting premium pricing, right? The client is getting like a promotional, it's like a premium, like a special price for them. Yeah.
yeah. The yeah, and the other piece, yes, you may shift slightly, but the other thing that I want to really caution you against that I see a lot is people trying to save people through their business. If you are trying to save someone through your business, then you are running a charity, not a business. The target market you pick must have money. I'm going to say that again. The target market you pick must have money, because if not, you will be running a charity and not a business, and therefore you will need charity unless you are independently wealthy. You cannot target a market that is penniless, right? Or poor, because they're not going to be able to afford what you're offering. And two, if they do, they will probably miss payments. Any product I've ever sold for $200 that somebody asked me for a payment on, I know they're either going to quit halfway through, or they're going to miss a payment, or that it's just, that's why I don't sell products at the, well, it's part of the reason I can't create products that are only 200. I just can't help myself. I have to do more than that. But it's one of the reasons why I couldn't do it if I tried. But if I could, that I wouldn't.
Yeah.
This is one of those things that you have to be aware of as you're doing your work. Now, so don't try to save people. That you can, if you want to do that, then you can do that as a side business or a side little charity
Volunteer.
thing,
You can volunteer
volunteer,
somewhere.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not something you make your primary focus for your
Yeah.
business. And so the other thing I would say is that's helpful is to target the market that is 5 years, 5 years ago. So if you really don't know who to target, you know who you were 5 years ago. You knew exactly what was exciting for you, what you were focused on, what you were working on internally, what you were afraid of, what your pain points were, all of that intimately. And that is an easy way to pick a target market if you don't have anything else. Okay. So you know who you are, you know who you're targeting, and how do you pick your offer? Right. So we talked a little bit about the structure of the offer in terms of how are you delivering it and what are you delivering based on who the target market is. Right. So what you have to keep in mind is that it has to be, one, in a way that the person is going to consume and find valuable. Two, it has to be sustainable for you. Okay. I have resisted doing membership programs for years because I know that I feel overwhelmed with the work of having to create something new every single month to do a membership program. I know that I suck at going in and keeping the engagement up and all of that in a membership format. Now, somehow in my brain, it is different to have coaching groups, which is effectively the same thing. Okay. But I know yourself, right? It's effectively the same thing to do a coaching group, but I don't find that exhausting at all. But it somehow the membership site is, I think it's because the membership site is inherently lower engagement. And I think that's what the difference is for me, is that it's a lower engagement system because people aren't paying the premium pricing, so they don't get the in-depth stuff. And that's what I do. And I don't know how to do it less. And I find doing less to be too much for my brain to gear down to. And so I think I'm just figuring this out right now as I'm talking. But that's why I don't do membership site stuff, because I don't want to be doing all this piddly little stuff and these lower level interactions that I'm not really able to do. I've tried and I don't do it well, and it exhausts me trying to. And so it needs me to pull back in a way I don't want to. And this is the other piece, is it has to be sustainable for you. So if you think about this, if you lean into the feeling of it and you're like, okay, this is what it means to do this particular format, and that overwhelms you and you feel like, and your energy goes down and your body goes, ugh, then that's not what you should do. You need something that your body is in alignment with, that your excitement level is high for. That's literally why I'm pivoting into the retreat business right now, is because I did the retreat in November and I was so excited for it to come up. And I was so excited all the way through it. And I was exhausted, but so excited at the end of it. And I'm like, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And so I'm shifting into that format, and I'm letting my student coaches, my certified coaches, I should say, take over the other parts of the business, because this is what I am excited and passionate about. And that's the other piece, is that if you're not excited and passionate about it, if you don't feel like you could do it over and over again for the next decade, you shouldn't do it. It's not your signature program. right? Because that's what a signature program is. You do it over and over again for the next decade, right? I know they say you have to commit for a year, but the commitment for a year is to make sure it's marketable in the way that you're creating it. Kathy and I used to run a program years ago called Manifest Your Mission, and we both agreed that we could run that program over and over again for the rest of our lives because we had such a great time with it. But the program was different every time we ran it. So because it evolved as we evolved, and it evolved as the with the people who were in it, and that's why it was so interesting for us, and that's why the Adventures in Energetics program is different every time I run it, because it's based around the people who show up. The same thing with the personal retreats, right? So for me, the changeability and the ability to be in the feminine and be in my intuition and allow things to ebb and flow and be with that is part of the process, right? And so this is part of why I love it, is that the magic is emergent and I can be in the flow of that emerging energy. Not everybody can do that. It isn't something that everyone is skilled at or that they enjoy. Having a lack of structure for a lot of people is very disorienting. And so it may not be for you, right? But this is why you need to find what works for you, what's easy for you. The reason I set my learning, my coaching up originally in online businesses, in an online course rather, is because I didn't want to have to teach the same material over and over again because that was boring to me. But I needed the structure of it to help people move through the process that I was coaching them on. And so it gave a structure to people. And I knew my market really wanted a structure. They wanted a framework. They wanted something to put their head into so that their head could stay busy while their energy got to work, right? And so that was why the course was so important, is because my niche needed the framework and the understanding, and they needed to get their head to wrap around the ideas that I was giving them. And then I could work with them intuitively in the rest of it, which is the way I like to work, right? So I've got this engineer brain that lets me break everything down. And I love writing the courses. Don't get me wrong. Love writing the courses. But I don't like teaching them over and over again the same way. So that was a good combination for me. Now, what I've learned over the years is that sitting on the computer 24/7 is not my happy place. And this is another reason why the retreats are better for me, because they get me outside moving more, right? So it's about the lifestyle that you want to live. Your signature offer needs to reflect the lifestyle that you want to live. I love being in person with people. I love being out and about. I love having this ability to be in that framework of moving through the energy and being intuitive in my process. Therefore, this business works for me, right? You need to think about, what are the things that work for you? Do you like large groups? Do you like small groups? Do you like one-on-one? Do you want to work in person? Do you want to work virtually? Do you want to be able to travel all over the world and do your work at the same time? Okay, virtual may be right for you. Do you want to be in your home in the middle of nowhere and work with people? Then virtual is probably necessary for you because you probably don't have enough people in your local market, right? So you need to think about the practicalities of that and how you're going to engage in that. Katherine, you want to jump in with anything?
Just to bring up the point that I think it's also important for people to, and this is related to the money comment that you talked about, it's also important for people to be aware of what you're making an agreement with regarding someone's capacity to invest in themselves. And so you may think they don't have the money, right? But often that can be our own projection. And so when we can just be really solid state in the knowing that people are way more resourced than they or we are aware, if we can be really solid state with that, it can empower them to make the decision to invest in themselves through your program. And there generally it's a, again, depending on kind of what level you're at in your business, it's going to be a discovery call, strategy session where you're having a conversation with a person. And then you might move into more of purely a launch model where there's not that kind of personal one-on-one time with them. But your energetics around their capacity to invest really matters. And I think back, I had a client who, when we started working together, she was going to a food bank. And I'm not a high pressure salesperson. It's all about, what would you love? It's all about, right? Is this calling for you? Is this in alignment with you? And then if it is, I'm going to support you in resourcing yourself. And so in doing that for her, it was always just a full body yes. like a full body, yes, I want to work with you. Yes, this is the right step for me. And honoring and acknowledging her inner knowing and her wisdom. And so she said yes, and it was at the highest level of investment that I had at the time. So it was at the time it was $1,000 a month, and for someone going to a food bank, that was that's a lot of money.
Mhm.
But she said yes, and over our time together, I think she like six-folded her income or more, and the money showed up for her. And so again, as a practitioner, yes, you want to be if you're targeting people who are, I don't know, like homeless or, you know,
Disability or
yeah, like you want to be mindful, but you also want to hold the knowing that because this is part of, and we're going to do an episode on transformation. This is part of that process is supporting people to transform, is knowing that they are more capable, they are more resourced than they are currently able to access through their level of thinking and awareness. And when you can support someone in shifting their thinking and awareness and belief, they then start to be able to access different levels of resources, both in the seen and the unseen. So
yeah.
that's all I would add to that.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that's probably more a sales conversation piece than a signature offer piece because you're not going to be targeting people who are getting their food from food banks
Hmm.
because you weren't targeting people who were getting their food from
No,
food banks. You were
no.
targeting people who were trying to build a business and
Yeah.
do the spiritual thing, and she just happened to show up. This is again is the niche question, right? So this person
Hmm.
happened to show up and you in your sales conversation could help her through that process
Hmm.
of calling her into a higher level of beingness, right?
Hmm.
But that's not who you were targeting. And
No.
so that's the key that I'm talking about here is that
Yes.
we say, "Oh, I don't want to let that person go." She didn't let him go, right? She got them involved and she kept them involved and they six-folded their income and all great things. But that's not who she was targeting, right? Because as a coach, that's a bigger lift than the people who are already ready to do that work.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so you don't want to be targeting the people who are bigger lift because then you're
Hmm.
giving more of your energy out than you need to. And when
Hmm.
the occasional person shows up that really needs it and is really aligned with it and is really ready, and I will tell you, people who are not ready will self select out. But if you're targeting them, they won't. And then it becomes problematic, right? So you want to make sure that you're targeting the right people because then when somebody who isn't quite ready for the level of the program that you're at, but is really ready for the transformation, then you can work with them like Katherine did. But you'll have the energy to do that because you're not trying to lift up a whole bunch of people who are not ready at all to do the work.
Hmm.
So that's the difference is that people who are really ready will walk past the internal thing that says I can't afford to do this and they'll get on the phone and say how can we do this? But people who aren't will not do that. They'll be like, "Oh, I guess it's not for me." And they're just not ready. And that's okay. But your focus, your target market needs to be people who are both financially and emotionally, energetically ready for the work. And that's what we're talking about here. With that, you also have to keep in mind that if 5 years ago you were broke and not doing well, then that may not be the right target niche for you. But if you were working another job or you had a partner who made the money for you or whatever, if you had financial means to be able to do a higher ticket program, then you are fine to do that for yourself. But the mindset that you had back then, if you were broke, is going to be a broke person's mindset. And you don't want to be doing your messaging based on that. So just keep that in mind. And if you're finding yourself going, but those people need help too, I understand. And they do get help, but not from people just getting started. Okay. When you are getting started, you need to do a higher ticket offer. You need to do a more personal one-on-one offer. When you have 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 followers, you can afford to do offers that are lower priced for that lower end market that doesn't have the money. And that's because they can make it up on scale. So you need to, because if you don't have that kind of following, you will not make a living doing that kind of work, right? So you need to target the people who have the money to pay you for the more personal approach that you're going to take because doing that level of marketing for the $500,000, 500,000 person list is also a massive undertaking. There's huge amounts of emails that you have to write and follow-up sequences and abandoned cart sequences. The amount of effort to do that is massive, right? So you have to keep things updated and you have to keep them fresh and blah, blah, blah. So it's a never-ending system setting process. And you need to know what you're dealing with. You need to plan accordingly. Now, if you're an influencer, you've got 1 million followers, then you can absolutely do a low price offer. And in fact, you probably should initially, just to get people in the door and spending money with you for the first time, right? But if you're starting out from scratch or you've got several thousand people under your belt, then you're a lower ticket offer or mid to upper ticket offer is a better option for you. You want to add anything to that? Nope. Okay. All right. So now that you've got that done, you've got that idea in place and you know what you want to do and how you want to do it and who your people are and whether they're going to receive that, then I would say before you write anything, go find 15 or 20 of people that are in your target market and say, I'm thinking about writing this program. What do you think? Get a good title for it. And ChatGPT is great to help you with that, right? But get a good title for your program and then go out and talk to 15 or 20 people about the program you're going to write and see if they light up. If they go, oh, yeah, that's cool, that is not the program. At least not the program title, or you're not describing it well, or whatever. But if they go, woo, then you've got something, right? The big challenge that I see with a lot of people is they'll write like, Josh, I'm just going to give him shit because I think he said, I told him to write a lead magnet once and he put 43 lessons into it. And I'm like, that is not a lead magnet. That is an entire course. And it's a high ticket course. And then he's writing another one right now. And it's got, last I checked, it was 73 modules.
Oh my God.
I'm like, okay. He's like me. He loves to like share what he's got. And I'm no one to talk. In 20 years, I've got 178 programs in my system. But that's 20 years worth of my writing. But he loves to write. He's a writer. He loves to write. But the problem is that until he's done with it, he won't know whether or not it'll be saleable. And I told him that. And he's, I don't care. I'm going to write it. I'm like, okay. It's his call. And you may choose to do that too. I need to really know what it's going to be. And until I finish writing it, I don't know what it's going to be. And I'm like, okay. I can't market what I don't know what it fully is yet. And I'm like, all right, I get that. So if that's your thing, then that's your thing. But I will tell you that if you can write an outline, get excited about what's in the outline, and then create that, the outline creates the framework that you're going to sell the program through. And then you can talk to people about it and find out whether or not they're excited about it. And you need to ask not just, what do you think of this, but would you buy this? Because them thinking about it generally is one thing, but actually being willing to put their money down is another thing. And so that's the other piece of the puzzle you have to pay attention to there. All right. And then if you get good response from that, then you go and you put it all together. You create the entire system. Depending upon how you're doing it, you may do it after you've sold it. There's a lot of people out there who say, oh, you've got to sell the program before you write it, before you do it. And you can create it on the fly, do videos with the group in there and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, you can. I'm like Josh, I add things to my stuff as I go. But yeah, I've done that and it works okay. It's good. But I also see the value in writing it all out in advance too. So it just depends upon what you're doing as to whether or not that's useful. And this is, again, assuming that you're doing a course, right? You may not decide to do a course. You may decide to do retreats like I'm doing. You may decide to do an in-person or one-on-one coaching. And that may or may not include any content. When I'm talking about writing things, I'm talking about writing a course. So keep that in mind. Anything you'd like to add?
No.
Okay. And then the marketing comes into play, and that's a different thing. We've talked a lot about marketing in the past, but the marketing also has to be targeted specifically to the niche that you're focusing on. So that is another piece of the puzzle, but that is for another day, right? We're just talking about the signature offer creation. And so it's To be clear, a signature offer is the one thing that you're going to do. For me, I'm getting away with splitting it into two, which is the group retreats versus the personal retreats, but I'm doing retreats is the one thing that I'm doing, right? And then that's all I talk about is the retreats. And then I get to bring all of the other stuff that I do into the process because I'm talking about this one thing. Okay. And then you do subtopics for your marketing from there, but everything comes back to the one offer, right? So that's the key is you want to bring all your CTAs back to calls to actions back to the offer. And that's how you get people in the door. That's how people understand who you are and what you do. It's how they understand how to refer you. It's how they understand whether or not they need your services. All of it is the same if you just keep coming back and coming back to that same offer. Because the average person needs to, I think the number was 23 impressions the last time I checked. They need 23 impressions of you before they even remember you or what you do. And so if every impression says something different, they're not going to remember you. It needs to say the same thing over and over again until they go, oh, that person is that person. They do this. And once that's in place, now you're in a better position to receive more referrals and to get more business in the door. So the sooner you can land on a solid signature offer and commit to it, the sooner your business has a chance to build the momentum to give you business coming in the door on a regular basis. And unless you have anything else to offer, I'm going to call that good for today. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget, what you focus on is what expands, what you intend is what you create. So choose wisely.